How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another Overwatch League mid-season check-in. In today's video, we will be discussing our top 10 surprising players of the 2020 season. Like in any other season, there's going to be players that stand out to you in ways that you simply weren't expecting. And just to offer as much variety as possible, any players chosen in this video could be for a positive reason, a disappointing reason, or even something that just confuses me. Keep in mind that this list does not go in any specific order, by the way. It's more of a list. With intros aside though, let's get started. And how about we kick it off with a simple one? Leading off my top 10 is Lip of the Shanghai Dragons. Coming into Season 3, I can't really say I thought much of him. I saw him as a potential long-term project, if you will. I figured he would take the time to learn under veterans like Fleta and Diem before getting any serious playtime. But boy was I wrong. Lip has completely surpassed my expectations. Not only is he the full-time starter at DPS, but he's also played a pivotal role in Shanghai's success. Until he joined the Overwatch League, I never even knew he existed, and I mean, can you really blame me? It's not like he had this super impressive pedigree before joining the league. He played for a struggling Korean contenders team whose biggest achievement was pretty much finishing top 10. Half of the time it was a struggle just for them to make it through trials and open division, so of course I never would have heard of somebody like him. But as I so often do, I let previous history blind me. I should have realized that Shanghai wouldn't have signed this guy without good reason. You don't make the Overwatch League if you can't demonstrate top-notch skill, and oh boy, he has been doing a great job with that. He's a high-quality starter and superstar who is absolutely in contention for the Rookie of the Year award, and it goes without saying that he's one of the best hits game players of Season 3. I mean, what is there to be said about his play that hasn't already been mentioned? His prowess on the hitscan role is extraordinary, and at the head of his strong play is none other than his Sombra. He's been a machine on her. In my opinion, he's probably the best Sombra player in the league, if not the second best. The hero damage in particular is pretty alarming to me because he's pretty much head and shoulders above everybody besides Hisu. That level of damage means he's charging EMP at an absurdly fast rate, and those EMPs have often been game changers for the Shanghai Dragons in their matches this year. And while this has been the primary hero we've seen him on, it is certainly not the only one he's proven to be deadly with. His Tracer, McCree, and Widow are also solid. And then there's his Ashe. On this hero, he shows true dominance with over 11,500 damage per 10 minutes, with 9 final blows and 20 elims to go along with it. This guy shows no mercy. I've been pleasantly surprised with his performances this year, hence why he made my top 10. Now that we've gotten a basic one out of the way, let's talk about a wackier one. The next player to make the top 10 is Hydration. What a bizarre season him and the Outlaws are having. He starts off as their flex DPS who mostly just plays the Mei, but now suddenly he's the starting main tank. Of course, we've all known about Hydration's flexibility throughout the years as he's played tank and many other things with his time on the Gladiators. However, he's always been a DPS at the end of the day. That's what he's primarily played. But his current situation with the Outlaws has changed this. Now he's a full-time tank player who slowly got integrated into his new role as the Outlaws continued to struggle with Muma. And you know, he's been surprisingly decent. It's not saying much, but he's absolutely been an upgrade over Muma. The Houston Outlaws have consistently shown a more competitive edge since he became the full-time main tank. He's been an alright Orisa and Winston player. Even in their losses, they are finding ways to make games and individual maps closer. They nearly reverse swept Florida the other day for crying out loud. Hydration plays a lot smarter than Muma. He hasn't been making the same silly mistakes. As a result, the Outlaws are more consistently having their main tank alive to absorb the damage and provide the stability needed to win drawn-out fights. Another thing about Hydration, though, about stepping into this role, is that he seriously might be an upgrade in terms of communication and leadership. Let's face it, Muma has never really been a leader. He's always been more of a follower. Hydration, on the other hand, is chill, but he's a bit more vocal. Synergy has definitely improved since the Outlaws made this swap. Hydration has been on point with Meko and his DPS with the pull combos on the Orisa. It's like they're a completely different team in a way. Houston still needs to get better, sure, but they are certainly heading in the right direction right now, and I personally believe that Hydration's sudden swap onto main tank has largely been responsible for it. Alright, so far we've had 2 pleasant surprises, so let's change it up a bit. Coming in at the number 8 spot on my most surprising player list is Leave. I'm not sure how the rest of you feel out there, but for me he's been a disappointment. Now granted, with how bad Chengdu has been this year, it's not easy to find ways to stand out or put up a lot of great performances. However, the true DPS stars can drag the rest of their team kicking and screaming even if they aren't a good team. Look at somebody like Decay for example. Given how gifted Leave is and his reputation before joining the league, I kind of expected him to provide that consistency that the Chengdu Hunters have been lacking well for their entire existence really. His pop-off potential and flexibility led me to believe he would be the answer. What a silly mistake that was, though. Both from the team and individual perspective, Leave has not been living up to the hype. I once regarded him as one of the most talented DPS players in the world. Now he kind of just bides his time being average or even worse than that. If you can barely even contribute from the individual standpoint, then that signals to me that you have not been part of the solution. He's not showing off that world-class skill right now. I guess the competition is too great because he has not been dominating. If you look at the leaderboards, he tends to be average or even worse than that on most of the heroes he primarily plays. The only exceptions I can think of are his Echo and I guess his Sombra, but you'll quickly find that he does not have the same luck on McCree, Tracer, or Ashe. I was high on him before joining the league. It's a shame to see him not realize his potential. Did I maybe put my standards a bit too high? Perhaps, but I only did so because I know he's a capable player. I knew very well that he was walking into a tough situation this year, but I had confidence he would make Chengdu better, and he's greatly let me down. Moving on to player number 4, I've got Sanguine of the London Spitfire. What a pleasant surprise this guy's been. Like with Lip, I didn't even know who he was before joining the league, but it's even worse with Sanguine because at least Lip played in contenders. The highest level of competition that Sanguine was a part of were monthly and weekly tournaments for one of Genji's sister teams. He only earned like $1,000 in prize money, I believe. He was literally a nobody who seemingly got picked up off the street, but clearly that London coaching staff saw something in him. They scouted him off the ladder and decided to give him a tryout, which I'm assuming he passed with flying colors. Because after all, you don't sign somebody with pretty much no pro experience if they don't blow your socks off with their first impression. London signed a handful of these types of players, and it was my hope that one or two of them would pan out, and Sanguine is helping that hope of mine come true right now. Sanguine truly has been a high caliber starter, and I'd argue he's A-tier level right now. Seemingly out of nowhere, he has become a breakout star. For somebody who never got any recognition before joining the league, he has some fantastic intangibles. His IQ of the game is quite impressive. The way he plays reminds me a lot of Animo. He's more of a passive player, but unlike Animo's situation in certain scenarios with New York, this really works well for London. They play a slow and methodical style. Being passive isn't always a bad thing, it really does depend on what works for you. It's actually kind of terrifying how similar he is to Animo though. Look at his combined stats on Lucio and Brig. He has the low kill participation, but he dies less than 4 times per 10 minutes. He really hasn't played any Baptiste or anything this year, but that hasn't been his job to play that hero, so I can't really fault him when thinking about flexibility. When he plays the heroes his team needs him to, he does his job, plain and simple. He plays slow with his team, and he keeps himself alive so he can guarantee the safety of his teammates. His stats are not going to jump out at you by any means, but Sanguine has been pretty good. He really seems to be taking advantage of the fact that there was practically no pressure on him to perform this year. He's truly caught me off guard with this level of consistency, and I'm excited to see how the rest of the season plays out for both him and the Spitfire. Coming in at the number 5 spot is none other than BQB of the Florida Mayhem. I talked about it in my awards video a while back, but he has just completely blown me away this year. After seeing him in Season 2, I was convinced he was like a second or third best option on a team, like a B-tier DPS player if you will, but he's really proven me wrong right now. He's gone from what I consider to be just a bench player to a high-quality hit-scan starter in the Overwatch League who even got playtime over Saya player right from day one before he went on his hiatus. It really goes to show what kind of help he's getting from the new coaching staff he's working with because he's a completely new man now. It's kind of crazy. He's been a dominant force on the Ashe, Widow, and McCree, and he's been holding his own against some very talented players like Carpe, for example. If you combine his stats with the Widow, Ashe, and McCree, he's top 4 in the league total damage-wise per 10 minutes. Over 9k damage is really nasty. And I mean, if you're just going to look at his Ashe stats, you could definitely make the argument that he's like a top 5 Ashe player in the Overwatch League right now because he's top 2 in hero damage, he's number 1 in eliminations, his damage rates are just absurd. BQB truly has been a different player this year, and it's very unexpected for me, I have to say. I never thought he'd be able to reach this level, hence why he had to make my top 10 here. Moving on to my number 6 spot, I have Ben Best. I'm actually amazed with how much better he looks this year. Better teammates and coaching seems to be all he needed to unleash his true potential. This is one of those cases where I let previous seasons blind me. After the failure that was Season 2 Paris, I was convinced that Bwipo just wasn't good. He was really bad. I couldn't get past the numbers. It blinded my ability to remember that players can change for the better. It could not be more obvious to me now that he was lacking the support he now has. He didn't have the same level of healing or protection, not to mention that he has the amazing coaches that have probably helped him learn a lot compared to last year. Bwipo truly has been reliable this year, and I couldn't be more proud of him. As one of the biggest Bwipo haters of Season 2, I am willing to admit I was wrong about him. I shouldn't have let one bad season dictate what he is capable of doing in the next. I'll be straightforward here. His Reinhardt play has been nothing short of incredible. He hasn't really been making his mark on any of the other main tank heroes, but that's okay. Orisa and Winston aren't really his forte, but that's why they have no smite. It's his job to deliver on the Reinhardt, and that's exactly what he's done. He's done what his team needs him to do, simple as that. While his damage is only like slightly above average, I believe he makes up for it with his Earth Shatters. He's gotten great value out of that ultimate. His big play set up his teammates very well. Another thing I'd like to add with his Rein is the low death rate this year. Only dying about 6 times per 10 minutes is pretty good considering the fact that most Rein players this year average 6.5 or more deaths. I can't complain very much about Bwipo at the moment. At the rate he's going, Paris might turn to him more and more often for the starting main tank job. Bwipo has simply blown me away. Hopefully he can keep this level of play up going into the second half of the season. Coming up next on this top 10 is ANS, also known as Ans or Ansan Sniper. His situation is pretty similar to that of Lips. He was pretty much a nobody who played for a struggling team in Korean contenders who never did better than a top 10 finish. He was consistently on a bottom of the barrel team who had to fight their way through trials just to survive. And from what I've heard, he wasn't even that good back then. Next thing you know, he goes on a temporary retirement in early 2019 where he mostly just focused on streaming and the occasional monthly tournaments. He pretty much was never talked about, nor did he ever accomplish anything. But now 2020 rolls around and Krusty is very interested in him. At the time of the signing, I figured he'd be nothing more than a specialist who basically only came in for sniper metas. The Shock had 4 amazing DPS at this point in time, so I assumed he'd get minimal playtime. But now here we are, nearing the beginning of July, and he's played a crucial part in the DPS rotation. I mean, he's been nasty. His mechanics are disgusting, and now that he has amazing coaches, he has the game sense needed to be one of the best hits game players in the world. It's terrifying how dominant he has looked on the Widowmaker, McCree, and Ashe, and he's even made the toughest of foes practically beg for mercy. We've seen him go toe-to-toe with some incredible players like Decay, Xe, Hisu, BQB, Birdring, and KSP, and he's outdueled those guys a bunch of the times. That's pretty insane, especially when you consider that 3 of those people are fellow rookies that many people rated higher at the start of the year. He's been insane, and I don't think it's a hot take to argue he is currently a top 3 Widow in the league. He's right up there with the elite Widow players of the game. Ansan is dangerous. That guy really scares me. What's terrifying to think about is that he probably hasn't even hit his peak yet. In all likelihood, he could only get better from here. I mean, he's already winning DPS duels against some of the best players in the game. If he's already at that level right now, I don't even want to know what kind of destruction he'll be capable of by the time the playoffs roll around. Heading into the number 8 spot, I have Marvel. He's been shocking in a bad way, but I can't really say it's all his fault. After having a successful year with his partner in crime Michelle, I kind of expected him to be the starting main tank anytime he didn't have to play Sigma into double shield, but the coaching staff of Seoul seemed to have different ideas. For whatever reason, they thought it was a good idea to transition him into a full-time off-tank, and needless to say, the results have not been pretty. When he's on the Sigma, everything is fine. He more than holds his own there. But anytime he's had to play D.Va or Zarya, the results have not been ideal. His combined stats on D.Va and Zarya don't exactly inspire confidence, as he ranks bottom 10 or worse in damage, final blows, eliminations, and deaths per 10 minutes. Again, he primarily has played the Sigma this year, but about 3 hours of playtime do come from the other 2 heroes I mentioned, and that is fairly significant considering that he doesn't even have 6 hours on Sigma. So a little less than half of the time this year, he has not been making significant contributions in game. This little experiment that Soul tried is a failure, and I really do feel bad for Marvel. He was forced out of his comfort zone because the coaches believed that him and Gesture always needed to play at the same time for whatever reason. After playing Michelle against Chengdu over the weekend, I really am hoping Soul is done playing Marvel at this position, that way he can go back to practicing main tank again. Marvel was easily one of the most consistent and reliable players on Soul last year. It hurts me to see him having such a down year for such ridiculous reasons. I'm quite surprised and disappointed over this whole situation, and I pray that Marvel can play without being held back in the future. Now back to some more pleasant surprises though. Coming in at the number 9 spot is Birdring. Right off the bat, I wanted to apologize to him. I had my doubts about whether or not Birdring was good enough anymore. He went through so much on London between the injuries, the losing, the negative mindset. It felt like he just wasn't in a great place. Of course, he did show flashes throughout the end of Season 2, but he was lacking the consistency. Season 3 was do or die. Between having to overcome the negativities dealt with in the past and playing in an English-speaking environment, it seemed like this year could end up being quite the challenge. I doubted the Gladiators' DPS. I was not sold on them, and I figured this team would fail if they couldn't perform. I wouldn't say I had no faith in Birdring whatsoever, it's more that I felt the chances of him not being good enough were slightly higher. But oh boy was I wrong. He's been wonderful. I wouldn't go as far as saying he's back to his peak just yet, but he certainly has looked like it at times, and as you'd expect from him when he's at the top of his game, his sniper heroes and McCree have been top notch, and to my surprise, he's been a capable tracer. Because he played with Prophet and he didn't look as good as him whenever he did play her while in London, I kind of figured he was kind of just, average on her. But no, that's not the case at all. In my opinion, he has definitely been above average. All in all, so far, I consider this to be a successful bounce back year for Birdring. He's back to his old self before that infamous injury happened pretty much. Whenever the Gladiators have won or have been part of a back and forth battle, Birdring has consistently shown up. He's had his team's back. Maybe a change of scenery was all he needed. Perhaps London just wasn't the right fit. And last, but certainly not least, occupying the final spot on the list is Sodo. What is there to be said about him that hasn't already been said? He's practically a new man. After all the struggles and criticism he had to go through in Season 2, there was quite the big question mark on his shoulders on whether or not he'd be the guy for Philly moving forward. I don't even want to imagine the mental struggles he had to endure. But even through it all, him and the team around him remained confident in his abilities. And to the benefit of both parties, that was certainly the play. It was bold to not even sign a backup main tank this year, because that told us that Philly were going all in on Sodo, and clearly that has worked out in the best way possible. Sodo has been reborn. Through a stronger support line and team overall, he has gone from one of the worst Reinhardt players to one of the best. Look at his stats. It's a thing of beauty. His high kill participation and low death rate is just amazing. That's what you love to see. Because he gets more assistance than he used to, he can contribute more than he used to and die less at the same time. It's perfect. The sheer amount of space he makes helps guys like Carpe and Alarm so much, not to mention that he's been one of the most consistent main tank players from a general standpoint. It's a pretty astonishing transformation. All he really needed to be enabled was more attention. The Fusion have made him a focal point of their team this year. By simply investing in him more, now he's capable of going head to head with the top dogs in the league at his position. Sodo is at the top of his game. He's awakened what he's truly capable of. Because of his drastic improvement, there aren't really any gaping holes that can be exploited against Philly anymore. Sodo has hit his stride. The Fusion are now well-rounded enough to be a potential title contender, and it's all thanks to him getting the help he really needed. If he can keep this up until the end of the year, he certainly will be in the running to win Most Improved Player. Big congrats to Sodo here. I'm sorry for doubting you, dude. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's top 10. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to see more top 10s from me in the future, then be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget that you can also follow my Twitter, join the Discord server through the link in the description, and become a channel member if you wish to further support me by hitting that join button. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate you guys, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.